And good evening, everybody. This is Vinny Milletti, the owner, partner, founder of Milletti Law, the law offices of Vincent Milletti. You all know the website by now. It's www.millettilaw.com, M-I-L-E-T-T-I law.com. We are the strongest name in law, the authoritative force in employment law. So the set of videos that are coming out that I'm briefing starting today are really going to have to do with a variety of codes of conduct, having to do with more corporate culture. So before I get started, just so you know, this is going to be part one of a 12-part series. This is called The 12 Unique Canons of Corporate Conduct Made Easy for Employees, part one. The 12 Unique Canons of Corporate Conduct Made Easy for Employees, part one. So this is the first canon, okay, of 12 of them, all right? So where does this come from? So by way of an introduction, in light of COVID, you know, what you're seeing is, you know, a lot of business shut down during this time. A lot of companies have closed their doors. Corporate, like large-scale corporations, typically haven't closed. Really, a lot of small businesses have been hurt. What happens with the corporate culture is a lot of mergers and acquisitions. You know, weak links wind up getting consumed by larger companies. Companies merge together because they want to, you know, utilize space more efficiently, reduce costs, ensure, you know, kind of like ensure a standard level of profitability. So you see this a lot, right? So this is really common in the corporate environment. What's happening in this kind of situation is that it introduces a new aspect to employees. So employees of all levels are always familiar with an employee handbook, right? Almost every company, any company that wants to avoid some kind of liability always has a handbook, because handbooks do things like create a presumption to protect employers, okay? So you want to tell a judge you have an anti-harassment policy, that's a good thing for an employer, because it protects you, right? It's like a presumption that the employer has to protect them, that the employee has to counter, right? Now, when you get to the corporate level and you're dealing with shareholders and you're dealing with executives and stuff like this, you have another layer. One of those layers is known as a code of conduct. It's where the corporation comes out with some kind of like a framework for all their employees that's typically published that exemplifies the corporate culture and what they desire from employees. So, you know, this is very common, and you're seeing it more and more, because now that these corporations are beginning to merge due to COVID and everything, you'll find, you know, you're gonna notice this more so than less, you know, because of the situation, right? So in this particular series, you know, the point here is we want to endeavor to educate employees and kind of give them a heads up on the easy way on what we're going to take. Like we're going to take certain codes of conduct, certain canons, 12 of them in overall, and what we're going to do is we're going to standardize them, and we're going to explain them to the employees to show that there is an easy way. It's nothing intimidating. The corporate culture is not intimidating at all. It's an easy way to follow it and to be able to comply without much hassle. Hence, we call this the 12 Unique Canons of Corporate Conduct Made Easy for Employees. Part one, 3-minute introduction. We're going to handle this as a standard IRAC format: issue, rule, analysis, conclusion, IRAC. So let's begin. We're going to start today with this issue. Here's the issue. An employee sends confidential information, take it from an internal and secure network, and sends it from the internal secure network to their personal email at home. Not for anything nefarious, but just simply for the purpose of reviewing at a later point in time. Let's say that this person is a supervisor. Let's say this person is an executive director. Whatever the case is, this person wants to review a document later on due to issues of, you know, too busy in the workplace, too crazy. So they take this document, they email it to their personal, they take it off the corporate server, email it to their personal email, to their, you know, system at home. So that's the issue. So now this touches on 2 rules. Now most corporations will have a rule on confidentiality, and they also have a rule on, and I have it written here somewhere. I'm usually very typically disorganized for this. And they usually have a rule for, you know, protecting company property, which also includes data, right? So confidentiality, obviously, you got a duty to keep it confidential. Typically, if you're a management level employee and you're sending this type of data home to yourself, you're probably, you know, that's confidential data. That's specific for, you know, the position. That's specific for the proprietary information for the company. Proprietary being it might have some kind of trade secret, or it might have some kind of some kind of value to the company that company perceives as unique, valuable of its own, right? So it could be spreadsheets, it could be corporate designs, it could be financials, it could be whatever the case is, right? So You have confidential information, and then you have just the general canon of, protecting and using proper company data and company property, right? So the protection of company property, protection of company data, and confidentiality. So with that in mind, what issues do you see when you send data, when you pull data off the secure company network? You pull that data off and you send it to your house, which likely isn't a secure company data network. You run the risk of theft. You run the risk of someone, maybe an cyber hacker, an intruder coming in, causing a big problem, right? So it becomes an issue for you. And something like that is a very simple, benign thing that an employee does with no mean intent, no nefarious intent, not looking to steal anything. But something like that often can get looked at as a problem. It violates the code of conduct. So, we look at the analysis, right? According to a generalized rule of confidentiality and protecting employee and protecting company data, confidential information is generally considered to be held together at the highest level of protection, right? So as an employee, especially as a managerial employee, you are required to maintain the integrity of that data the best you can and maintain that confidentiality and make sure it doesn't go nowhere, right? So the simple rule, the greatest protection you can offer for any company confidential data is leaving it on the company property, is letting it remain on the company server and not taking it off. This is where you run into issues, right? So you want to avoid doing that. So maybe you just want to come in a little bit earlier tomorrow and take a look at that and get the free time you need. Take your information, go somewhere in the company where it's quiet to use it, because what happens is once you take it off the company server, it no longer has that kind of protection, and then you run into issues, right? It is very likely that your home network does not have the same level of security that's available at your company. I mean, companies spend millions of dollars on, network and safety and security. You probably purchased Norton, right? Nothing to say bad about Norton or McAfee. Nothing to say bad about McAfee, but it's very different than multiple VPNs and multiple layers of security protection that a company spends a fortune on, all right? So right now, so what's the easiest way to do this, right? How do we conclude? The easiest way to conclude is that, look, simply put, if the employee sends confidential information from their very internal and secure company computer and sends it home, sends it by way of personal email or drags on a USB out from the computer to their home at a later point in time, you run the risk of violating the code of conduct, right? So ultimately, you are doing an action that you believe is helpful for the company because you are agreeing, you're saying you want to take this data and you want to work at a later point in time when you have peace and quiet and you can do it. And at the end of the day, you risk your job because what happens is, God forbid, something happens to that data, that confidential data, you are going to be in a world of trouble. So, issue. Transferring data off company server, send it to your house to your private email. Rules. You run into issues of confidentiality, you run into risk of protecting the data. Analysis. That's a big problem because if it gets disclosed, that confidential information gets disclosed, your company's at a disadvantage and becomes a big problem. Conclusion, don't do it. That's your first canon. Don't do it, okay? So going back, remember the label of this video is called the 12 Unique Canons of Corporate Conduct Made Easy for Employees. Canon number 1, do not send data off of your private company server and computer to your house where it is less protected, less confidential, less secure, and exposed to risk. And that's part 1 of the series of 12 unique canons of corporate conduct made easy for employees. This is Vinny Maletti. We hope this little brief video was informative. There will be stuff to follow, and you have 11 more videos coming up. Introduce them in a little bit. Have a beautiful day, and yours in law loves and lifts. Join the newsletter.